Hello, I'm Clovis Casali and this is Face Off. Will Paris finally get to host the Olympics? The French capital has now officially entered the race to organise the 2024 edition, and politicians have vowed to let sports stars do the hard work. But is this the right strategy? Another story making the headlines in France involves former President Nicolas Sarkozy. He used a controversial analogy to describe the situation of migrants reaching Europe, saying it was like a water leak. Philippe Turle from international radio station RFI and Jean-Marc Gonin from Le Figaro magazine are here to debate about those issues. Welcome to the two of you.
Hello.
Before we talk about Nicolas Sarkozy, here's a reminder of what he actually said and the reactions with a report by Delano de Souza.
Nicolas Sarkozy isn't yet on the campaign trail, but immigration has become an issue he's already starting to address. In front of his supporters, the former president uses a metaphor of a leak to describe migrants crossing the Mediterranean.
It's like when you live in a house and a pipe bursts and there's water everywhere. And the handyman arrives and says, "I have a solution. We're going to take half the water and keep it in the kitchen. We'll keep a quarter in the living room and the other quarter in the master bedroom. And if there's any left over, it goes in the kids' room."
But it's an analogy the socialist government of François Hollande doesn't find funny.
I think everyone can agree, when there are such serious issues, you should address them with seriousness and with care.
Analysts say the former president addressing the migrant influx is another sign the 2017 presidential campaign is underway.
There's nothing unusual about Nicolas Sarkozy campaigning because he's running for the 2016 primaries. But you also get the impression with François Hollande's frequent visits recently to various regions and meetings with heads of small businesses and tax breaks he's announced that he too has kicked off his campaign.
Nicolas Sarkozy's pivot further to the right is seen by experts as an attempt to secure his party's nomination and pull voters away from the far-right National Front.
Jean-Marc Gonin, Delano was just saying in this report that this turn to the right could help Sarkozy win his party's nomination for the 2017 presidential election. Do you agree?
Yes, it's a strategy. He has chosen that very strategy for two reasons. The real issue to be president in his eyes is to win the primary of the Conservative Party he's leading. And his plan is following. The tune he's singing is Islam, immigration. The rest he leaves aside. Economy, programs, he doesn't care. He hammers on those two issues. The tune is very close to what Marine Le Pen says. What does he want? He wants to get a chunk of the more radical electorate behind himself. And, well, the party apparatus will somehow follow him. He will head the race. He will win the race of the primaries, and then he will become a president. That's his plan.
His plan is also to win the election with the right wing of the Conservative Party. That's his aim, as you said in your introduction, to bring back those who've deserted the right wing. Now they're called the Republicans and moved off to support Marine Le Pen of the far-right National Front. He wants to win back those supporters, or as many people who might be tempted by Marine Le Pen's policies to try to persuade them to vote for him if he were to run for president. We're seeing a sort of return to the Nicolas Sarkozy we saw in 2012 for his last presidential campaign, which was also fought on the right of the Conservative Party, but which failed to get him to secure him a second mandate, but only by a very small whisker, if you like. So that's why he's doing this. And I think also the other thing, to go further with what Jean-Marc was saying, is that he can't talk about the economy, he can't talk about unemployment, he can't talk about France on the international stage, because it's too early yet to do that for a presidential contender, because he knows he's going to be shot to pieces by the left-wing opposition if he starts talking about how he's going to bring down the unemployment rate. So this is safe ground for him.
But do his party supporters want a tougher stance on immigration with tougher words like we've just heard?
Well, there are those who definitely do. And I think those are obviously the supporters that he's aiming at. There is another group within the Republican Party which is more in the centre. He's not too worried about them for the moment because there are other contenders in the party who want to go more to the centre than to the right. His ground is on the right. He's made these clumsy statements before. I think this is what we have to call what he was talking about this leaking tap in a house. It's not the kind of thing that I think most people in France would like a former president of the Republic to say. And if you look at the opinion polls, most people still don't want Nicolas Sarkozy to come back for a second mandate.
And since he made this political comeback, Nicolas Sarkozy, he's been addressing supporters all over France with these types of rallies, kind of a grassroots campaign, if you will. And he's been making quite controversial comments each time. Is he doing it on purpose?
Yes, it's deliberate. It's deliberate. He is not a clumsy politician. He has a lot of energy, but he knows what he's talking about. I think it is deliberate because he thinks he will get his strong basis to reconquer power on this part of the field, that is a radical right, and he won't go into other parts of the opinion for the moment, as Philip was saying, also because he thinks it will be time when we are in the election process after the primaries to get to the centre, to talk to the centre.
And if you listen to what he's saying, he's not coming up with a solution. He's just saying, well, look what's happening. It's as if we're dividing the water from this leaking tap into different rooms in the house. But there's no solution to this. And I met a lot of people on the left and in other political parties in France are saying, well, in fact, if you look at it, Nicolas Sarkozy is in part to blame for this because he was one of the parties involved in getting rid of the former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. There was no exit strategy there. There was no long-term policy. And look at the state of Libya now, which is where a lot of these migrants are coming from. So how can Nicolas Sarkozy say this when he is in part responsible for the situation in France?
He's been also copying two strategies that have been successes in the recent times. Netanyahu in Israel, he's close to Netanyahu, as everyone knows, and Cameron. And both have taken very tough, harsh, radical lines, and they won both elections against all odds. So Sarkozy thinks, if they did it, I can do it.
And at the Socialist Party Congress in recent weeks in Poitiers, Manuel Valls, the French Prime Minister, said that Nicolas Sarkozy was a problem for French democracy because of these kinds of statements. Do you agree?
He's not a problem for democracy because if people don't want him, he won't be elected. He is, I think... He knows that he can get away with a lot of statements and he will win support, as we've been saying, from the radical right, which is what he wants to do, because that's where he thinks the basis of his voters, his electors are.
That's his whole strategy.
That's what he's after. So he will make these outrageous mistakes, outrageous comments, if you like, to try to win back those voters whom he lost last time round. And he doesn't have any problem with that.
Look at Jacques Chirac in his time, when he was a candidate years ago. Now he's considered as the sort of grandfather of the nation. Everyone likes him. But when he had a problem with radical right in his party, he talked about the smell of migrants when they cook in the houses in French suburbs. I mean, this was also over the line, but in the end, he won.
And everyone's forgotten.
Well, now to a different topic, completely different, a lot lighter. With the 2024 Olympic Games, Paris wants to host them. 3/4 of the French people want to have these games, according to a recent poll. The two of you live in France. The two of you live in Paris. Do you want these games?
I certainly do. I was very frustrated when Paris lost to London in 2005, was it? And I think we deserve the city deserves. I mean, as the cradle of modern Olympic Games. I mean, the thought of Olympics was born in this city. 100 years without games in Paris, I think.
Unacceptable.
No, it's a great nation of sports.
Well, I agree with Jean-Marc. I think it would be good for Paris if the games came, because I think there was a terrible disappointment last time round in 2005 when London won and Paris lost, and everybody thought Paris was going to win. So this time round, let's hope they do. And I think it will, if they can translate it into the same beneficial situation that London did in 2012, then there's no reason why Paris shouldn't do as well if they get the games in 2024.
And this time, the politicians, the authorities have changed strategy. The politicians are taking the back seat, letting the sportsmen and women lead this project. Do you think that's the right strategy? Will it pay off?
I think that's what they wanted Sebastian Coe to do in the UK, and that's why they're doing it this time round in France. I think the politicians don't want to be seen as trying to take advantage of what is a purely sporting occasion to try to promote their own image. But there's nothing better for a country than to have some common ground to work towards, which is not political, where we can all fight to win these Olympic Games, whether we're on the left, the right or the centre. And that's what President Hollande would like.
And the government has been keen to stress that these Olympic Games wouldn't cost too much, only a €6 billion budget. That's half the amount spent by London in 2012 and a fifth of what Beijing spent in 2008. Jean-Marc, can France afford to host these games anyway?
Oh, yes, indeed, France can afford this. And never forget, those things are not just for an event for 2 weeks. I mean, you modernize, look at the chunks of the London city that have been modernized through the games. I mean, I've been working for 3 years in one of the places where the games are going to be organized, north of Paris. I mean, this is a place that deserves a real new haircut and a nice building site, and that will be the case.
Well, Jean-Marc Gonin, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Philippe Turle. That's it from us. See you soon. Stay tuned to France 24.